The wind howled like a wounded creature that evening, rattling shutters and churning waves against the rocky shore. Claire, the innkeeper with a spine forged in fire and past regrets, had just latched the last window when she heard it. A knock. Not a frantic one, but soft. Measured. She hesitated. You don't open your door to strangers during storms. Not when you've been burned before. But something, maybe the silence between each knock, held her there. Outside stood a man drenched to the bone, hair slicked back, eyes clear as titipools.
Hello, I'm going to tell you this incredible story. Put on your headphones for a better experience and sit comfortably because you're going to be moved. Remember that to receive new stories like this, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the notification bell. Without further ado, let's get to the rest of the story.
Liam, that was all he offered, along with a smile that didn't beg, but somehow asked for mercy. He held no phone, no umbrella, just a backpack and manners that felt old. Polite. Lost my wallet, he said, voice gentle. Not asking for much, just a dry spot till morning. It sounded rehearsed, yet honest. Claire narrowed her eyes. She had seen touching stories before, some played out right on her porch. Drifters with sweet words, leaving stolen silverware in their wake. Her heart had hardened for good reasons. And yet, the storm roared louder, as if nature itself were nudging her shoulder. Her fingers hovered over the lock. It wasn't compassion she felt. It was curiosity. A real story was standing in the rain, smiling. That had to mean something, right? Storage room, she muttered, unlocking the door. One night, no funny business. Liam thanked her like she was saving his life. And maybe in some strange emotional story kind of way, she was. He stepped inside, not like someone intruding, but like someone remembering how to be home. That part startled her most, how quiet he was, as if he respected the silence more than the shelter. Claire returned to her evening routine, but the storm outside had found its echo within. She peeked at the storage room once before bed. He was already asleep, curled like a child, using his backpack as a pillow. Why did that sight make her chest tighten? She shook the thought away, chalking it up to rain and loneliness. But deep down, something had begun shifting. It always starts with something small. By morning, the sky had cleared, but Claire's thoughts were murky. She expected Liam to be gone. Most were. But there he was, sweeping the porch with a broom he must have found in the shed. Not saying a word, just helping. She told herself to be annoyed, but found herself watching instead. Real story moments don't come wrapped in bows. They sneak in, wearing soaked jeans and kind eyes. And just like that, he stayed. At first, as an inconvenience, then as a question, and eventually, as something she couldn't name yet, but could feel like the way you notice silence differently after music stops. Little did she know, the real storm hadn't even arrived. Days blurred into each other like watercolor in the rain, and somehow, Liam never left. He didn't ask. He didn't explain. He simply started showing up, fixing the leaky pipe under the sink, chopping wood before she asked, even mending the old steps she'd been ignoring for months. It wasn't the kind of help that demanded gratitude. It was quiet, steady, real, like those emotional story threads you don't realize are weaving something until you stand back and see the tapestry. Claire didn't like admitting it, but she started waiting for his voice in the morning. The soft, morning Claire that came with the scent of firewood and poorly brewed coffee. He had this way of making her laugh at things she hadn't found funny in years. Burnt toast, crooked shelves, her own stubborn habits. Still, she kept her guard up. People don't just show up out of nowhere and stay without a reason. Not unless they're hiding from something. Or someone. Sometimes she'd catch him staring at the ocean, as if it whispered secrets he wasn't ready to tell. He never talked much about his past. When she asked, he'd smile and shrug, saying things like, "I've been around," or "I needed to stop running." Colloquialism or confession. She couldn't tell. But the way he said it, gently, like a man who'd carried too many miles in silence, kept her from pressing further. Some real story truths are too heavy to unpack all at once. One afternoon, she caught him singing, off-key, but with heart, while baking the worst banana bread she'd ever tasted. And yet she smiled. It wasn't about the bread. It was about the sound of someone in her kitchen again. That scared her more than she admitted. These weren't just touching stories anymore. This was her life shifting quietly, one act of kindness at a time. The villagers noticed. A few asked questions. New handyman, he's staying long. Claire brushed it off, pretending she had all the answers. But inside, she was tangled. He was like a book with a cover that felt familiar, yet none of the pages matched. The more she read, the more she wanted to know how it ended, or if she was part of the plot at all. Some nights, she sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, watching him stack firewood with the precision of someone who'd done more than just survive. She wondered how someone so gentle could carry such weight behind his eyes. The emotional story playing out in front of her was real, but unfinished. Something about Liam still didn't add up. And then came that second storm. The one that wouldn't just test the inn's old shingles, but her heart, her trust, and everything she thought she knew about this drifter who stayed too long and said too little. The second storm rolled in like a beast with a grudge. Growling thunder, sideways rain, trees swaying like dancers on the edge of collapse. Claire, never one to be rattled by weather, noticed something strange. A metallic clang coming from the cliffs behind the inn. Curiosity pulled her outside, umbrella in hand, boots already sinking in mud. It was foolish, but habits are hard to break when you've lived too long building walls. And Claire had built many. The wind screamed as she reached the edge. A loose gutter? A broken shutter? She never found out. The ground beneath her gave way, wet soil crumbling under her boots. In seconds, she was falling. A flash of sky, a blur of rocks, then darkness. When she came to, her leg was screaming and the rain stung like needles. She called out, but the cliffs swallowed her voice. Cold, soaked, and scared, her heart pounded, not just from fear, but from realizing how alone she truly was. Except she wasn't. Liam burst through the brush like a man on fire, slipping, shouting her name. When he found her, his expression didn't crack, it shattered. "I've got you," he said, lifting her as if she weighed nothing, though his muscles strained. He didn't ask what happened, didn't waste a second. Through rain, mud, and treacherous paths, he carried her home. That night by the fire, she saw him, truly saw him for the first time. Not a helper, not a guest, a protector. Wrapped in blankets, bruised but breathing, she thanked him. Really thanked him, not just for saving her, but for staying, for being the emotional story she didn't realize she'd started living. They sat in silence, fire crackling between them, a new warmth blooming. Liam looked different in that light. Stronger, yes, but something else too. Like a man who carried not just secrets, but purpose. The air between them changed. Days passed. Her leg healed slowly, but her trust, that was quicker. She found herself opening up, laughing louder, asking questions she never dared before. And Liam? He remained consistent, kind, always helpful. But then came a moment that cracked the illusion. She heard him late one night, his voice sharp, crisp, commanding through the thin hallway wall. On the phone, the words weren't just strange. They were precise, corporate, powerful, not the language of a drifter. Claire's heart sank. Who was this man? What game was he playing? She didn't confront him right away. She watched. She listened. The man who carried her through a storm was the same one issuing orders into a sleek, jet-black phone. It didn't make sense. And yet, deep down, she knew the emotional story unfolding wasn't fiction. It was a real story. But now, it was laced with a mystery she hadn't signed up for. She confronted him on the porch the next morning, where the rain had left the world smelling like second chances and regret. "Tell me who you really are," she said. And for the first time since he'd arrived, Liam looked afraid. Liam didn't deny it. He didn't run. He simply lowered his eyes and said, "It's complicated." But Claire wasn't looking for poetry. She wanted facts. After everything, after every unspoken moment and every emotional story they'd begun to build together, she felt played, manipulated. Like every word he hadn't said was now louder than the ones he had. "I can explain," he murmured, but it wasn't enough. Not when the walls she'd slowly let down were now rising fast, brick by brick. She told him to leave. Her voice cracked, but her resolve didn't. She watched as he gathered his things. The same worn backpack, the same soft steps, but this time, the silence he left behind wasn't peaceful. It echoed. The inn felt colder without him. Her routine returned, but it was emptier. It's funny how quickly someone becomes part of your story. How quickly a real story stops being just yours. The nights stretched longer. The coffee tasted bitter. Even the ocean seemed more distant. Then the phone call came. Her father had collapsed in town, right outside the bakery. Panic gripped her chest as she raced to the hospital. But when she arrived, he was already stabilized, and the nurse said someone had performed CPR right there on the street, stayed until help arrived. Tall man, dark jacket, quiet, the nurse said. Didn't give a name. Claire knew. It was Liam. Of course it was. The same man who always showed up when it mattered most. Back at the inn, she found signs, subtle ones, that he'd never gone far. A fresh stack of wood by the shed. The porch swept clean. Someone had been watching over her, silently, faithfully. And just when she thought she couldn't be surprised anymore, the limousine arrived. Not a taxi, not a dusty car. A sleek, polished limousine. And from it stepped Liam. Not in worn jeans, but in a custom-tailored suit, like something out of those touching stories with secret heirs and lost fortunes. Her breath caught. The man she thought was a humble drifter was something else entirely. And yet, his eyes, they were the same. Gentle, honest, nervous. I didn't want to be found, he said, stepping closer. Not like that. Claire didn't respond. Her mind spun. Her heart tightened. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a twist in a story she hadn't seen coming. Still, something inside her, something softer than reason, held her back from slamming the door. After all, emotional story arcs are never straight lines. They loop, they break, they return when you least expect. And this one wasn't over. Not yet. Liam returned not with promises or power, but with truth. He walked to her door without bodyguards, without bravado, and knocked like a man hoping for more than entry. When Claire opened it, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw the same man who sang off-key in her kitchen, who scraped mud off his boots without being asked, who had carried her through a storm with shaking arms. And this time, he didn't hide. He told her everything. He spoke of the empire he was set to inherit, the boardrooms and headlines, the life that never felt real. How he'd left it all behind to find something genuine. I wasn't looking for love, he said, but I found you. His words weren't fancy, but they were raw, real. The kind you only say when you've got nothing left to lose. And Claire, though still hurt, could feel the walls inside her trembling. It wasn't the story she expected, but it was a real story, one that had rewritten her. He knelt, not with flash, but with humility. In his hand wasn't a diamond the size of regret, but a small band. Simple, honest. I'm not asking you to marry the billionaire, he whispered. I'm asking you to marry the man who burned banana bread and used the wrong screwdriver on your kitchen drawer. Claire blinked, fighting a war between logic and love. And for once, love won. 1 year later, the inn looked different, but it wasn't the fresh paint or the new garden beds. It was the people, the laughter, the purpose. Together, they transformed it into a retreat, a safe harbor for those needing more than just a roof. People came with burdens. They left with stories. Emotional story after emotional story bloomed there, watered by the love that once began with nothing but rain. Their wedding was barefoot in the backyard, surrounded by seagulls, cake crumbs, and tears. No gold-plated venue, no orchestra, just friends, waves, and a man looking at a woman like she'd saved him too. And maybe she had. Sometimes, the most touching stories begin not with fireworks, but with a knock on the door and a quiet yes whispered through the storm. Liam danced with her under string lights. They hung themselves, his tie long forgotten, her dress kissed by sand. The inn glowed with warmth and music, and the waves applauded from shore. They didn't need a fairy tale. They had something better, a home, built not on secrets, but on truth, not on status, but on kindness. The kind of love that doesn't fade when the rain returns. It grows stronger in it. And sometimes, when the wind howls again and the shutters rattle, Claire smiles at the memory. Because once, a stranger arrived soaked, silent, and smiling, and left behind a forever neither of them saw coming. What would you have done if Liam knocked on your door that stormy night? Would you have let him in, or sent him back into the rain? Stories like this remind us that people aren't always who they appear to be, and that sometimes the ones who change our lives forever start as complete strangers. So tell me, do you believe in second chances? Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary at first, but later revealed a truth that shook your world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And hey, if you love real story moments that touch your heart and twist your expectations, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next emotional story we share here. You won't believe what's coming next.